Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork will commence later this year. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service providing insider news and knowledge to investors. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, it's great to be back, Jim.
Old-fashioned inflation, what is that, and who's expecting it to happen?
Well, we put out our report to clients on Monday with the three key insider themes, heading into the new year. And one of the themes that we're looking at, and we drive these themes, by the way, based off of our rebalancing of the Canadian Insider Index, what we see through our daily screens in the stock level, different stocks, what insiders are buying and favoring, and also our indicators. And when we look at all those factors, one of the themes that emerges is that insiders are positioned for a comeback in inflation, and they do that through economy-sensitive stocks and mining stocks. Because without inflation, you wouldn't be betting on any type of mining revival. And so what we're seeing now is a nice move in our mining indicators, and in particular our gold stock indicators, to multi-year highs. And so this tells us two things: is that first of all, we've got a situation that has been completely dismissed by most of the consensus that there could ever be inflation again. And the Fed minutes were released this week, and it was like, the Fed is worried about not hitting its inflation target. They're puzzled. They're miffed. Exactly, whatever. Okay, so why might that be? Well, maybe it's because they, for the first 7 years after the financial crisis, all their monetary stimulus went into real estate and stock prices, and hasn't made its way into consumer prices. I don't think that's big. It's a big mystery for the Fed, but certainly anyone living in Vancouver can tell you where the inflation's been, and it hasn't been in tubes of toothpaste. But that could be set to change here, in that stimulus will keep moving in one direction for a while, but it can't keep going in the same place all the time. I mean, it's just going. If anything, the cure for high prices is high prices, and at some point, Amazon stock just becomes too expensive. Maybe we're not there yet, but there's a lot of numbers being thrown around. But when you have some of these stocks trading at massive multiples that really assume massive growth, at some point it just becomes too far-fetched, and it doesn't take much to change sentiment. Now, there's usually a catalyst that's involved, and that's why these things can keep going. They can keep going, and you don't know when they're going to reverse. But eventually, things get so expensive, and something comes along and shakes things up. And what will it be to move money out of financial assets and have people scurrying to actually buy stuff again? And, it could be a couple of things. And, it could be eventual success with labor markets finally being able to demand higher wages, which would force companies to put up prices whether they want to or not. It could be government transfers like we're seeing in Canada. People are still worried about the inflation rate in Canada. Don't worry about the inflation rate in Canada. It's going up. And, because you've got a government that is handing out money to people as a gift, essentially, and that is inflationary. because in these people who are, and there's arguments for these types of policy. I don't want to get into that debate, but when you're giving people money to spend and they haven't produced the same amount of wealth for that money, it's inflationary. Now that could, you could be in favor of that or you can be opposed to that, but in general it's inflationary. I mean, we're talking about investment implications here. So, we've got a pro-inflation Ottawa government right now that's doing everything it can to put up the inflation rate, and it's tightening up mortgage rules, trying to drive money out, to stop as much money going into real estate as there was, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, by tightening up the rules to take out a mortgage, you're making it harder to leverage up and go into the housing market. Okay. So if people are spending less money on housing, what are they going to spend more money on? Well, they can spend more money on going to, the coffee shop and buying a coffee, or going to buy some more money, put some more money on into the Christmas toys. What we could see a reversal in Canada of what we've been going through over the past five or 6 years. So every country will be different, but the real zone to keep an eye on, there's actually two, but is Europe. The Wall Street Journal had a nice piece yesterday comparing the bond markets in Europe to the United States. And if Europe gets some inflationary traction and the bond market is signaling that maybe that's coming, then that will be a game changer. And of course, the other zone you always have to keep your eye on is China. And there's been a bit of lull in economic activity in Canada and in some parts of the world in this quarter. But let's just see what happens in the first quarter of next year, when financial conditions tend to loosen up in China, and we should get some momentum again from China. So based off of those kind of potential macro developments, it looks like insiders are taking advantage of the weakness in gold prices and gold stock prices, actually, not so much bullion prices, but gold stock prices, which have been lagging here. They're loading up, and they haven't been doing this, haven't loading up this much since 2015. In advance of a major bottom we saw in the gold market. So things are shaping up for a very interesting new year, I think. And one of those areas will be inflation, I think. Look, we've been talking about this for a long time. Is it coming? Is it coming? Well, we'll have to see. Certainly, insiders think the gold market will benefit from the environment that we're going to have in the new year. So that's one of the themes that we've identified for our clients for 2018.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Ted Dixon. Ted, the Auditor General, just came out with their report, pretty damning, really, of what the Trudeau government is doing. One of the problems is the Canadian Revenue Agency, it seems to me, is full of incompetence and mismanagement. Most of the people who call them for advice can't get through, and those who do get advice get wrong advice 30% of the time. And I wonder, if the advice they give is wrong 30% of the time, is their enforcement and follow-up wrong 30% of the time?
Well, I haven't read the report, but in general, the problems start at the top, and the political top, based off of objectives, priorities, and if you've got a government that is focused on collecting more taxes, which is what the Trudeau government has said quite clearly, then that will be the priority of the CRA, because they respond to their political masters. Under the previous government, they put more, I believe they put more of an emphasis on service and less of an emphasis on enforcement and collecting money. So, now this is anecdotal. I believe that the service levels are probably a little bit better under the Harper government in terms of, phoning in and getting things done. However, on the other side of the equation, though, enforcement kind of went off the rails, and we saw what happened in the Lower Mainland here, where there was basically zero enforcement on collecting any, on a lot of taxes in the real estate areas. So that should have been collected and enforced. So I mean, there's two sides to any coin. Doesn't surprise me what you've told me. I think probably if there's one major cultural mistake I think that the Trudeau Liberals are doing is this overemphasis on collecting, raising taxes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with collecting taxes, but this whole sort of focus priority on, there's a lot of thieves out there who aren't paying their fair share, and they're all ripping off the middle class. I mean, that whole narrative is just very destructive and divisive, and it's just not accurate. If they really want to go after collecting taxes, they could start at some of the local casinos and work with the BC government. I mean, I think they would have a huge community backing, and they would get a lot of support if they want to talk about tax fairness and cleaning up money laundering and tax evasion that way. I think everyone would be in favor of them. But when you start going after people for this and that and nitpicking on their receipts, and I mean, that's just laziness, and so that report doesn't surprise me. But the solution is at the top. And I would hope that someone in the Liberals would figure out that they should be fighting crooks, money launderers, criminals, as opposed to fighting taxpayers who file their returns and do their best they can to play within the rules. There's a lot of people who aren't playing in the rules, and it's hard to go after these people. Eventually someone will figure it out in Ottawa. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be the Conservatives or it'll be the Liberals or the NDP. Who knows? But eventually, someone will figure it out that maybe putting your own honest workers, taxpayers through the ringer is probably not the best political strategy, and there should be other priorities. So we'll see how that plays out.
Well, of course, too, you also have a government that continues to use that totally flawed payment system. Why can't they, if people in somebody's department aren't getting paid, just have the manager of that department sign a paycheck for them like they used to do? I mean, if the computers don't work, you can always refer back to the people.
Right. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of different priorities that they could set. So it's just puzzling sometimes how they get stuck on. How they get stuck on this sort of antagonistic road, where they're actually focusing on voters, who they should, when they could be focusing on elements that need to be cleaned up in society. Yet, I mean, look, the Harper Conservatives, they were very partisan. They alienated a lot of people in society, but it took them a few mandates, and now we have the Liberals. It has only taken them 2 years, and they declared war on a good chunk of the Canadian society, and I hope they've scaled that back. It seems that they have. It's for their own good that they need to scale it back, because they're just they're digging themselves in a bigger hole. But
are they continuing to attack small business?
Well, they've toned it down, but I don't know if that's because out of a plan, a conscious decision, or they've just had other things to talk about and worry about. So we'll have to see in the new year, and we'll have to see the budget. I mean, the next budget will set the tone for the next election, and we'll see if they continue to give Andrew Scheer, this wide open space, which only the Liberals could have done for him. And if they continue to talk about business as being, essentially evil and not paying their fair share, and that it's full of, just that sort of nonsense we heard in the summer. If they bring that rhetoric back, if you have some political hacks in the PMO and the Liberal Party go and do some focus groups, and they decide that's how they're going to run the government is by a bunch of stupid focus groups, then they're going to get what they deserve, and that's going to be a minority government at best. But if they actually sit down and think about some things, put some principles behind where they're going, and stop trying to alienate people, then, they'll get back on track. And that's what would suit, their leader, better than than trying to pick fights with people. So, we'll see. The Liberals are their own worst enemy here. I mean, they really got off the rails, and it was their own fault. I mean, when running a government's hard enough, you shouldn't be your own worst enemy. But looking at what they're doing from the investment side, Jim, which is really what we're concerned about, is that they are working to stimulate the economy, whether you agree with that or not. That's what they're doing. We have to position ourselves, I think, for more economic growth, nominal growth, anyways, in this country. Whether it turns to be real growth or not is another question. Real growth, once you get the inflation rate taken out of the equation, maybe the real growth won't be so great. But I think we're going to have some nominal growth. That's going to change a lot of things. Particularly in the bond market, and what your users, what your listeners can do. They can go to CanadianInsider.com and they can take a look at our free report section, and where they can look at the lying in wait for commodities inflation right up, and we have a sector report that registered users can download for free, and take a look at where insiders have been buying, particularly in the gold space, recently. So, that's one way one way, not the only way, to position for the upcoming new year, which I think will be, it's going to be quite interesting with respect to how, how inflation rates evolve. I think some people will be in store for some surprises.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascade Arrow Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascade Arrow's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascade Arrow the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadearrow.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. The federal government announced their federal housing policy yesterday. Did you see anything that's good for homeowners?
I haven't looked at all the details, so I'm skeptical on any centrally planned housing strategy. I think from what I heard a little bit from the mayor of Vancouver. There are some things in the strategy in terms of priorities that should have been done a long time ago that don't necessarily involve any taxpayer money. Just proper zoning and planning in the city could have gone a long way to mitigating some of the issues we have right now. I mean, the mayor is where's he been? I mean, where's he been for the past 4 or 5 years? I mean, too many trips to China, Jim. He should have been here, understanding what was going on. And, but look, the Vancouver voters like this guy, and they keep putting him back in office. So, at least he's seen the light. It seems that they've got to do, they've got to zone for families and not zone for offshore and foreign investors. I mean, and that's what we've had in Vancouver, for the last 5 years. So that he's seen the light now. Well, better late than never. And given the opposition on the city council, that's pretty weak, he may get reelected again. But at least he seems to be moving now in the right direction. So, I'm more encouraged about the zoning side, from what I hear from the city than I am, about, any national grand scheme to bring on more housing, and those measures always tend to be behind the curve, and by the time anything gets built, the market has probably solved the problem. So in general, I'm skeptical of a national strategy, but I'm happy to hear some of the things I've heard that's going to happen locally, and I do give the mayor credit for finally getting on board for that. I just wish it had been earlier.
Ted, thank you so much for doing our show.
Well, thanks for having me.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca. His website, CanadianInsider.com. You're listening to HoweStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. If you have any questions for Ted or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@HoweStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HoweStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HoweStreet.com radio is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.